Lovely, okay. Well, if you introduce yourself to start with.
Sorry?
Could you just introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, so I'm Des Manderson. I'm at the Australian National University. I'm in the College of Law and the College of Arts and Social Sciences, and I'm Director of the Centre for Law, Arts and Humanities.
Your take on public value for the arts, can you just very quickly say why you think it's important that that the public does value arts and culture?
Well, I think that arts are already completely connected and implicated in the way our society works, the way in which power is distributed and expressed. I think arts are one of the essential ways in which relationships between people are organised and expressed and justified. So there's no law without art. There's no nation without an art, with a flag, without an image, with a map, with a kind of sense of self, a sense of identity. All of those things are constantly being constituted by and disseminated through arts. Arts also has an important critical role in holding a mirror up to these aesthetic forms, these visions, these feelings, these images, so that people don't just accept the kind of ideology about how we relate to power and authority in this world, but think about it, to see how they're affected by the forms and images all around them, to think critically about them. I think one of the things that's incredibly important is not so much to say that arts matters, since in a way I think it's sort of like saying the oxygen doesn't matter, you know, like it doesn't matter whether you think it matters, it does, but to try and get a stronger sense of visual literacy and aesthetic literacy in the world. Because I think we live in a world which is perhaps more saturated than ever by aesthetic forms and visual media, by the ways in which our news presents information, rhetoric, language, narrative, images, refugees on the beach, refugees on the boat, refugees in detention centres. Those images frame how we understand the world, what we think about it. But all too often, I think, people don't notice that this is happening. They don't ask questions about where those images have come from, what they're telling us, how they're organised, how they're curated, how they're structured, what choices are being made. That's the kind of literacy that I think is incredibly important if we are to be educated citizens of the 21st century.
What's one thing you'd like to see change in the public understanding of the value of arts and culture by the year 2030?
I think that, you know, as I've said, I think that arts are implicated in social structures and implicated in their support, in their dissemination, but also in their critique. So I think that's just there. But I do think that arts will have an important role over the next 20 or 30 years in inventing the new forms and the new ethical relationships that we will need to survive the next century. So I think that this idea that arts are a kind of formal and ethical laboratory or experiment world for us to think and experience potential changes before they become instrumentalised in law and politics and social government. That to me is an essential role of art, and it's an essential role in art which is explicitly political and in art which is not at all explicitly political, but which is actually touching on these things in a highly creative, imaginative and undirected kind of way. So that's one thing where I think I'd like to see more recognition for what art can do. It's talking about structures in society and structures of our relationships, even when it seems to be talking about nothing else, or talking about sunsets, or talking about flowers, or talking about, you know, colours and paintings on canvases. So I think that's an absolutely critical point for us to appreciate and to understand. This creativity is relevant to society, even and perhaps particularly at those moments when it seems to be just a moment of play, a moment of freedom. Because I think in the world we live in now, we are going to have to think very hard about the problems we face, but we will need those moments of freedom, those moments of creativity. We will need to be able to jump up cliffs and hope and be free.